Hello everyone and welcome back to part two of our Ask the Gardeners. If you haven't seen part one yet, I will put a link up above somewhere, whichever side it goes. Get yourself over there and just familiarise yourself with what we've been up to, because I think we've actually all had quite a bit of fun answering your questions, and it's really interesting to hear other people's point of view of how they deal with things and, you know, sort of top tips for your garden. So we're going to carry on now with our second lot of questions, and we're going to start off with one for all of us. And this one comes from Robin Allen Miller. And it's quite a nice one to get your brains going, a bit of a warm-up. If you could only have two garden tools, which two would they be? Who wants to go first? Liz.
It would be a wheelbarrow and a hoe.
Ah, okay, okay. Erica?
I'm going to say a garden fork, like a hand fork and a spade.
Ruth?
I'm also going to go with hoe. I can't live without my hoe. And it's really hard, isn't it? My hand trowel. So a hoe and a hand trowel.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm going to go with Erica with the garden fork. And I was thinking about a hoe, but I thought actually, when I am weeding, I actually quite like to get down there and pull them out. Mike's a hoer. I'm a hand weeder, really. So my garden fork, hand fork, and the border fork for actually, if there is any digging to do that. So big fork, little fork, that's for me. But it does make you think, doesn't it? Because then you think, wheelbarrow. What would I do without my wheelbarrow? But it focuses the mind. Okay, wonder what you've got, Robin. Answers below. Okay, right then. Okay, we've got another question for you, Erica. And this is from Annette Hurt. As she says, she usually makes pretty good compost, but weed seeds still germinate. How can she kill them off? How can she make sure it's hot enough?
Well, that's the thing. It needs to be hot. I at home use a lot of Dalek composters, and they're kind of classed as cold composters. So anything you put in there will actually, the seeds will still then germinate. So you can either drown your weeds in a bucket for a couple of weeks before putting them on the compost, and you can use the liquid as a tea for your garden, or you can create a really, really, really big compost heap where it will get very, very hot on the inside, or you can buy yourself a hot composting system as well. So that's probably the easiest thing, drowning the weeds first, really, just to make sure that the seeds don't stay alive.
Yeah, so it kills them off, yeah. I must admit, composting is something I still haven't got on top of yet. I want to improve it, but also I suppose it depends on how much you have to compost. If you've only got a small space, then one of these hot bins might be good for you. However, if you're producing enough stuff to build up a fantastic big pile of stuff, why not reuse it, you know? Okay, thanks, Erica. Liz, Devon Way. Doesn't that sound nice? Devon Way has no luck with peas. And she'd like a recommendation for the best variety and how to get them to grow more than 6 inches.
So it very much depends on the time of year. So make sure you're getting a pea for the right time of year. But peas are actually mostly cool weather vegetables. They don't like it when it gets really hot. So I don't, all my peas are gone by the end of July, beginning of August. And I start sowing again late September, early October, so that I have an almost continuous supply of peas. And they will, if you've left them lying around, they will regerminate in the garden and give you a guidance as to when they're going to come up. So my favourite earlier peas are, I grow Oregon Sugar Pod as a mange two pea, Rondo a little bit later on, and if you've got space for a taller pea, something like Alderman's, which is a very tall pea, are great as well.
That's interesting. Do you grow peas in the polytunnel row?
I start them in the polytunnel, and then I did grow them one year inside, but they didn't do very well. I think it was just too hot. So I start
Right.
them in the polytunnel and then I get them outside at some canes.
Yeah, it's not something I've ever thought of, like overwintering. Is that what you're saying, Liz? You would over, so I suppose like beans, would they grow from the same plant?
Oh yeah, no, I grow peas right through the winter for the pea shoots rather than
All right,
actually.
okay. Interesting, yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Right, our next question goes to Rue. Carol Perry. She's growing red onions, but for the last 4 seasons, they've bolted. Tips.
So the fact she's mentioning red onions, she's obviously already discovered that red onions do tend to bolt more than the white or the green onions. My red onions did actually bolt last season, and they were ones I put in the autumn, and then we were very wet, and then obviously can't control the weather. It was really warm going into spring, and we got that real hot snap. It was almost like summer in spring, and I think that's why mine bolted.
Yeah.
But to try and just prevent them generally, if she's having trouble year after year after year, I would say make sure you're choosing the right variety to sow. I don't know if she's going seeds or sets. I am very much a sets person.
Yeah.
But so make sure you've got the right variety at the right time of year. Look for varieties that actually are advertised as less likely to bolt. And look for varieties that have been, it will actually say on the packets, heat treated. So it's like a natural process over a few months, but they are less likely to bolt.
Okay.
And it's bearing in mind, isn't it, that why do onions bolt? Well, it's their kind of coping mechanism. We're going to die quick. Let's get some seeds out and keep going. So they've got the right soil conditions. You've got them watered, not well enough, not too much, not too little. They don't want to feel as though they're going to die, and none of us do. And they like to be kind of well anchored. So I find with my onion sets, when I'm putting them in, I'm firming them in. They don't like to be kind of wibbly wobbly in the ground. They want to feel secure. So I think that's pretty much what I would say about onions.
I think as well, I think if you are growing onions, white onions, if you're growing them for the first time, white onions do seem to come a little bit easier. Is it not just me? Is that agreed? Is that a general thing? I found red onions very, very difficult for the first couple of years, really. And I always get a much smaller crop from them than the white onions. But no, that was really good. That's great. Thanks, Ruth. Okay. I have got a question from Donna Durham, who is growing chilies and peppers in her propagator and wants to know when to take them out. I am, sorry, I've just realised I've put my pencil, Liz, I've put my pencil down. I think the thing is with anything in your propagator, the reason you put things in a propagator is you are usually applying heat from underneath, or you are keeping them in a cocooned environment for the seeds to germinate. And once you actually see signs of germination, don't leave it too long before you either take off the lid to let them breathe a bit, or remove them from the heat from underneath, because the propagator has done its trick. It has started your seeds off for you. And I think the problem that a lot of people have is they then leave them in the propagator for too long, thinking that they're doing the seeds good, and what you're going to get is quite weak plants. So you want to start, what I would do with my chilies and my peppers, in fact what I've done is once they got to say an inch, got the first couple of little leaves off, I then transferred them to the windowsill. So they were getting plenty of light. It wasn't a sudden shock. I didn't suddenly put them outside. So the change in temperature would have been very gradual. But they've done really well, and they're now growing away as quite strong little plants. So don't be over kind to them. Don't keep them in that propagator too long. Get them out as soon as you can, really. Erica. Lorraine Cole. Where's the best place to site their compost bin? Full sun, shade, or what?
The best place really is to be in a shady area of the garden, somewhere where you never grow anything, because you know, it's not very good land. And that will mean that you can just continue to keep that compost heap in that area. If it's in direct sunlight, it's going to dry out. So you need to keep it somewhere, you know, you can have a bit of sun, but I would just really go towards that shady area of the garden that is really no use for anything else.
Yeah, yeah. And then we've got Liz, we've got Joanne Rose. Now this touches a little bit on what you were saying about peas. How do you keep Greek gigantes going year to year? Should you keep sowing and growing more just in case the ones in the ground fail? So do you grow them as perennials, or would you sow them fresh every year?
The Greek gigantes are a type of runner bean, and I grow all my runner beans as perennials. Yeah. So in the autumn, cut the tops off, leave about 4 to 6 inches of stem sticking out of the ground, mulch it heavily, pray that it's all going to be okay, that they don't get flooded and rotted, or they don't all die. And then in the spring, have a minor panic, sow some more, and then just at the point where you're thinking your new ones are ready to go into the ground, you'll see last year's coming up. And then
yeah,
and that's what's happened every year. So yes, I do sow some more. I probably don't sow. I've got enough I've got about 40 bamboo canes to grow them up. So I don't sow 40. I probably sow 15 in, and then I can start seeing what's come up or not. But just a quick word of advice. So far for us, the ones that are growing as perennials show much later than anything we plant in a pot.
Which gives you time to start to panic and think, oh my goodness. And I think it's quite a brave decision to actually stop, you know, just stop growing them annually and try and rely on them as perennials, because I would be terrified that they weren't going to come up. But like you say, just a bit of patience. And
yeah, and I mean, and I do sow those annual ones as a safeguard and as a precaution, but the ones that come up as perennials, rather than just sending up one shoot each year, it grows more and more.
Very good. So do you find them more productive?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. I might give that a go. Right, Rue. Mo McLaren says her patch is full of thistles and brambles, so she uses pallet beds. So I'm assuming like edged beds, raised beds, but she can't keep on top of the paths and the edges. What is the best way to clear them?
So the way I've gone about my paths is initially just cutting and pulling what you can. But my best advice would be to get something down. Now, I've used weed suppressant membrane. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it was really, really worth it. I've done my pathways with weed suppressant membrane and bark chip. And I suppose if you didn't want to use the weed suppressant membrane, you could use cardboard first, but get something down to just kill them off, stop the sunlight, get your bark chips. It doesn't completely stop. You're never going to be completely weed free. But what you find is that by the time they do try and burst through, they're so sort of meek and I can't quite get through, and then you can grab them then. So get on top of it in the first place. I would get something suppressant down, get it covered in your bark chip or whatever sort of mulchy pathway you want to use, and then whenever I go out to do anything, obviously I'm walking on the paths. And as soon as I spot something popping up, I grab it. I don't sort of wait until they've taken a hold. I'm always pulling a few up. So that's how I've tackled my pathways.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a question from Helen Simmons. And Helen has asked, which plants do well together for mixed planting and which don't do well together? Now, I'm assuming, Helen, what you're talking about there is companion planting, which Liz and I did a collaborative video on, and again, I'll put a link up to that. And yeah, companion planting, if you're growing plants together, again, if you've only got a small space, you want plants that are going to benefit each other, that are going to help each other out. So the most traditional one, I would think, that you find in allotments and gardens is putting marigolds in. Put marigolds by your tomatoes, put marigolds where you want to attract pollinators, you know, any of those things. They are so good for your garden. Carrots and onions, put them, interplant them, mix them together. The smell of the carrots will deter the onion fly, the smell of the onion will deter the carrot fly. Tomatoes and marigolds. I did asparagus and tomatoes last year. Didn't have great success, but they don't necessarily help out each other above the ground, but below the ground, they both release things through their root systems, which helps the growth of the other plant. What I did find though, and where I went wrong, and I will learn by this year, is I planted my tomatoes too close together and ended up with mildew, which then ended up with blight. So much as I thought to myself, I won't do this again, it hasn't worked, it didn't benefit the tomatoes, that was my fault for putting the tomatoes too close together. So one of those things you live and learn. But yeah, just make sure if you are putting plants together, you don't want to be putting a really tall plant next to a short plant. So you wouldn't put your peas necessarily next to your carrots, because they would shade each other, or rather the peas would shade the carrots. That's an example. You've got to be very much aware of what each plant needs with regard to the nutrients and the light, etc. Plants that you must not put next to each other, and I find this really interesting. I didn't quite believe it until I saw a video where someone had done it. Don't put things like sunflowers and potatoes next to each other, because the sunflowers will exude a certain nutrient from their roots, or it will go into the soil and it will stunt the growth of the potatoes. And so that, much as though it would be nice to think, yes, we'll just have a lovely mixed garden, we can put everything in and they'll all be friends, there will be certain things that do not go well with each other. And I think the best thing you can do, really, apart from watch Liz and I's video, is just have a little look online. There are so many guides for what to plant together, what not to plant together. If you've got a small space, do be very careful, because you know, it's not all sunshine and light in the vegetable garden. Lisa Sears Grieve, she wants to know what we all have. She says everyone seems to have something that they can't grow. She has trouble with onions. What do we have trouble with? Now, one of you is going to say you don't have trouble with anything at all, and it's absolutely wonderful in your garden, and I won't believe you, because there's always one thing. So, Rue, what about you?
I don't have any trouble growing anything. So the one thing I had awful problems with and haven't grown for 15 years, but I am going to have another go at, is brassicas.
Right.
And I was not experienced enough, and I didn't net them. So, and there were cabbage whites like you've never seen, and I just couldn't keep on top of the caterpillars.
Yeah.
I was going to say brassicas as well.
Okay.
I just don't have very much luck at all, but the main reason is I've never really protected them enough. So I think next year I'm going to create a dedicated area that I can actually make a very small cage around, and then hopefully I will get some good harvests as well.
Good. Liz?
Every year it's something different. So a few years ago I planted something like 3,000 carrot seeds and grew 6 carrots.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
And then the next year I was absolutely fine with carrots and struggled with courgettes. How do you not grow courgettes? But
Well,
so every year I seem to have something that just isn't doing it for me.
But isn't part of the beauty of it, in a way, is the fact that we do, as humans, tend to think that we can control, you know, we can sow them in the right compost and water them the right amount and do this and do that, but you can't control nature, you can't control the weather and your surroundings, and it all plays into it. And I think we do have to learn to play ball and all roll along next to each other, don't we, you know? And I think as well, I know, Liz, you've been talking about intuitive gardening, and that all sort of comes into that, doesn't it? Know your surroundings, know your climate, know what's going to happen or not happen, but always be aware that something might just come out from the left field and knock you for 6, you know. So yeah, don't give up if something doesn't work. I can't grow a cauliflower for the life of me. Okay, last question. And this one goes straight back to the one who asked the first question, which was Pat Reynolds. And I just thought this would be a lovely, hopefully inspirational question that we can give a nice answer to. And she actually says, how do you pick yourself up when things go wrong? And things do go wrong, as we've just said. You know, I know we all do videos, and very often the videos look lovely, and you know, but things do go wrong. What do you do, Liz?
One of the things that I've grown most in the last few years is friendships. So when things go really wrong out in the garden, I pick up the phone and I bleat to very often to Erica, sometimes to a friend, a very old gardening friend who's called Jane. Not old like you, Jane. Old,
no,
as
not as old as me.
As in elderly, plus I've known her for a long time.
Yeah.
So, but I will talk to a friend and just say, oh, it's going wrong. And they just, you know, go, hang on, get a sense of perspective. It's not the end of the world.
That's good to know. Rue?
It's all part of it. It's all part of the fun, if you like.
Yeah.
I don't actually find things do go wrong. Of course they do. But I find it a challenge. I think because my gardening is my release, I have quite a stressful job. And that's where things, if they go wrong, it really does matter. But when I'm gardening, it's like if something doesn't germinate, it's not germinated. It's not the end of the world. I'll have another go. And it's that challenge of, as I think I said in one of the other answers, I will jolly well make it grow. But it's that research, asking questions and finding out, well, why didn't it grow? What did I do wrong? Was it out of my control? Was it something that I did? So I enjoy that process of finding out why something hasn't been successful or why it went wrong, and then find a way to fix it. So I find that quite a challenge. And also, I've mentioned it before in previous chats and things, it's that you get that clean slate every single year. Spring comes again and you can start again. And that's one of the things I love so much about gardening. And even within a season, you know, you've got lots and lots of opportunities to have another go.
Very good. Yeah. Erica?
Well, I think that very similar to Liz, you know, I'm somebody that things go wrong all the time anyway. I think with myself with gardening, and I think, you know, once you've got over the initial kind of like upset that something's gone wrong, maybe you've just like moaned at somebody, I think generally you just have to get back up and keep going. You know, every year we always have that thing that didn't grow very well or was a complete failure, but we usually learn, or we know why that went wrong, so we can just change it and just keep going. I don't think any of us would be gardeners if we didn't have that kind of way of dealing with things. So yeah, I mean, I just would say I just keep going and try and do it differently next year and hope that I get a harvest.
I think as well, I sort of coming in on all of you here. It's for me, it's the challenge, and it's all the things. It's physically and mentally. For me, it's a big thing. It's my release. My garden is my oasis. When things go wrong, I might fall out with my allotment for a little bit, but I do keep going. And I think if you've got it in you, it's a natural part. Once you have got in sync with your garden, you are going to have arguments, you are going to fall out, but ultimately you are good friends. If everything went right, and I say this quite a lot, if everything was perfect all the time, it would soon be boring. Okay, well, I think actually I've learned quite a lot today. I'm getting redder and redder because my light's gone funny over there. So I think before I absolutely, you know, radiate in the corner here, it's time to say thank you to all of you for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm so grateful that you've all found the time, because we're all busy. It's only February, but there's still things going on. But yeah, hopefully as well that you out there will have found some of these wonderful answers useful to you. Do let us know in the comments below. Do have a look at all the channels. All the details and everything will be beneath. I've put a few links up as we've gone along anyway. But and if you don't know these people, why not go along, look at their channels? They are fantastic. Liz has had a special time recently. Liz, do you just want to hold something up for a second? We couldn't go without saying a big congratulations to Liz, who's actually, her book is actually being launched tomorrow. So well done, Liz. Again, details will be over on Liz's channel. So thanks very much for joining us. I will see you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
Yay!